Continued from the previous file, chapter Look Back in Anger. Allison's brother has a hazy knowledge, page 42, of life and ordinary human beings. He deserves some sort of decoration or medal for it. Allison's mummy has locked up Allison in her, quote, 8-bedroomed castle, unquote. Allison's mother is a rough, quote, as a knight in Bombay brothel and as tough as a matador's arm, unquote. Helena and Allison, both belonging to the middle class, are Jimmy's target of attack. Allison is attacked for her laziness, unresponsiveness and indifference. She is a, quote, moment to non-attachment, unquote. He describes her as, quote, lady pusillanimous, unquote. She requires the suffering of childbirth and the death of the child. Helena and her kind of people, quote, spend their time mostly looking forward to the past, unquote. The only place in which they can see the light is the dark ages. Jimmy is opposed to middle-class morality. Allison remained a virgin till she got married. Jimmy had a number of affairs with women and is sexually related to Helena. He is a rebel against religious practices and rituals. He does not want to get married in a church. He does not like Allison going to church with Helena. Church bells depress him. He makes fun of the people who indulge in, quote, midnight invocations to the Coptic goddess of fertility, unquote. He speaks mockingly of the Bishop of Bombay. It is true that British society has changed. The middle class morality is no longer what was in the mid-50s. We cannot now imagine the kind of opposition which Allison's parents had put up against Jimmy's marriage with Allison. Society is now more dynamic. Women are more vibrant and young men are more energetic. A character like Colonel Redfern, who is nostalgic about the past, is not to be found today. But Redfern disapproves of his daughter's tendency to sit on the fence and of his wife's procedure in having investigated into the activities of Jimmy through a private detective. He strikes a modern note in his comments on marriage. He recognizes the right of young people to choose their life partners. Helena's belief in right and wrong, Jimmy's comments on the value of suffering, and Jimmy's ultimate reliance on Allison as a companion and partner of life have a permanent value. In short, the play offers certain moral insights and psychological significance in the portrayal of characters which are not dated. Question 27. Consider Look Back in Anger as naturalist drama. Answer. Naturalist means faithful representation of life. It seeks to create and maintain a credible illusion of life. It does away with the conventional dramatic techniques of communication to the audience. In bracket, as for example, soliloquy, asides, etc., bracket closed. Page 43. Look Back in Anger is a naturalist play in its representation of the despair and disillusionment of a particular time. It communicates the feelings and ethos of the time through the creation of atmosphere and speeches and through the conversations of the different characters. The setting is symbolic in such a play. The choice of place, a flat in a small Midland town, the time of the year and day, the weather, even the repetitive and domestic task of ironing, which Ellison is engaged in when the play opens, all serve to communicate the dullness, flatness and purposelessness of the way of living in which the three characters are trapped. The room is a trap with the sounds of and messages of frustrating world. The inmates of the room indulge in angry slangs. Jimmy Porter is raging at himself through raging at others. His angry outbursts are a kind of defensive mechanism. The despair and frustrations of a society are enacted in the enclosed room with the characters raging, shouting, abusing, and even physically assaulting each other. Disillusionment is expressed not through merely disordered sentences and overt symbols, but through disordered talking, crying, through criticism, cruelty, and sentimentality of a trapped, identifiable group. What is central in the play is the sound of a voice. Jimmy has a sharp edge of voice, which conveys complex emotions. When Jimmy laments that people are no longer able to die for good causes, there is an unusual complex of social despair, fear, and hatred of women. In bracket, no, there is nothing left for it, my boy, but to let yourself be butchered by women. Bracket closed. It communicates class war and sex war. There are overt symbols like the bear-squirrels game, which create for the trapped man and wife a fantasy world. The incoherent shifting from one girl to another, in bracket from Ellison to Helena and back to Helena, bracket close, the fear of adult relationship and the nostalgic obsessions are made into a criticism of the world in which there are no brave causes left and no genuine emotional responses. Woman is the symbol of frustrating society. Woman swallows a particular self. An alienated man like Jimmy rejects his identity and gropes in sexual relationships to find company and consolation. Symbols play a part in this naturalist drama. The jazz trumpet of Jimmy is opposed to the church bells which stand for orthodox morality. The bear-squirrels game symbolizes escapist nature of the relationship that has grown up between Jimmy and Ellison. The action is supported and informed by a network of symbolic communications which deepen the social and intellectual meaning of the play. However, the symbols do not disrupt the realistic element in the play. Page 44. Question 28. Explain the significance of the bears and squirrels game in Look Back in Anger. Answer. The bears and squirrel game in Look Back in Anger is a sustained metaphor in the drama. The play explores within a formally perfect framework a particular kind of sexual relationship and incidental frustrations which are expressed in Jimmy's outbursts. In this connection, the bears and squirrels game has relevance to the theme of marriage in the play. This fantasy experience is a sophisticated form of sexual communication. It also offers a retreat from the world of reality, which is bitter and disgusting for Jimmy and Ellison. It is a kind of fantasy game for the husband and wife who cannot bear the strain of marital relationship. The world of squirrels and bears has been the only refuge to which they have always been able to retreat. The make-believe game of bears and squirrels is more than a retreat from an intolerable situation in their marriage. Both bears and squirrels hibernate to survive the winter, a symbolic hint that Allison and Jimmy can survive only by a form of retreat from the harshness of reality. At the beginning of the play, in the stage directions, we are told that among the miscellaneous articles on the chest of drawers, there is a large toy teddy bear and a soft woolly squirrel. Later, Allison tells Helena about the failure of her marriage with Jimmy. She says that the bear represents Jimmy and the squirrel represents herself. They have played the game with bear and squirrel and now they have lost the purpose. The game was the only way in which she and Jimmy could escape from everything. In the roles of animals, a bear and a squirrel, they could feel, quote, dumb, uncomplicated affection, unquote, for each other. They could spend happy time like, quote, playful, careless creatures in their own cozy zoo for two, unquote. Allison further describes the game as a, quote, silly symphony for people who couldn't bear the pain of being human beings, unquote. But now, says Allison, even those poor silly animals are dead. These animals were, quote, all love and no brains, unquote, says Allison in conclusion. On certain occasions, Jimmy and Allison used to imagine themselves as a bear and a squirrel. Then they forget their human character. In Act 1, there are moments of tenderness. Jimmy calls Allison a, quote, beautiful great-eyed squirrel, unquote, hoarding nut-munching squirrel. She calls him a, quote, jolly super bear too, unquote. They lovingly embrace each other. In a state of bliss, Allison is about to tell Jimmy about her pregnancy. When Cliff enters, the illusion is shattered. The escape into the fantasy world of animals has made Jimmy and Allison forgetful for some time to the harsh reality. Page 45. When Jimmy goes to London to attend upon the dying tenor, he asks Allison to accompany him. Allison refuses to go and instead goes to church with Helena in spite of the opposition of Jimmy. Jimmy picks up the teddy bear, looks at it and then throws it away. This shows that he is sorely disappointed and distressed, feels lonely and forsaken. He needs the companionship of Allison and she has let him down. The teddy bear is of no use to him. The fantasy world of animals can no longer provide escape to him. Allison prepares to go to her parental home with her father and picks up the squirrel and is about to put it in her suitcase. Then she changes her mind and puts it back. This is a symbolic suggestion that the toy squirrel has no meaning for her now because with the strain in her relationship with Jimmy, the fantasy world of animals has ceased to exist. Her action in picking up the squirrel shows her nostalgia and her decision to put it back indicates her disillusionment. At the end of the play, Jimmy and Allison are reconciled. Jimmy takes Allison's trembling body in his arms. They will be together again in their bear's cave and their squirrel's nest and will live on honey and on lots of nuts. In the mood of renewed tenderness, their minds go back to the bears and squirrels' game. They will sing songs about themselves, about warm trees and cozy caves. Ellison the squirrel will keep her big eyes on his fur and help him to keep his claws in order. He will see that she keeps her sleek, bushy tail shining as it should, because she is a very beautiful squirrel. Finally, Jimmy says in pathetic voice, quote, "Poor squirrels," unquote, while Ellison says, "Poor bears, oh poor bears." Thus, Ellison and Jimmy have passed through sufferings and are reconciled because each finds in the other his or her only companion and consolation. They are playing the fantasy game for the last time in their mood of renewed bliss because they have to face the stern realities of life. Question 29. How does Ellison describe her married life with Jimmy? What is her assessment of Jimmy's nature? Why does she return to Jimmy? Is her return justified? Or it is said that the ending of the drama is improbable. Do you agree? Answer. Jimmy and Ellison differ in their attitude and upbringings. Jimmy belongs to the working class, while Ellison belongs to the middle class. Ellison has middle class morality, which Jimmy taunts. He is angry because Ellison retained her virginity till her marriage. Jimmy married Ellison against the wishes of Ellison's parents. Jimmy had to live in Mr. Hughes' apartment immediately after their marriage. Page 46. Hugh and Jimmy used to invade the homes of Ellison's relatives for food and drink. They were gatecrashers, and Ellison could not tolerate that. Mrs. Tanner established Jimmy in his sweet stall, but she has no good feelings for the lady. Thus, Ellison has very unpleasant memories about her married life immediately after marriage. Ellison has no sympathy for Jimmy's attitude to life. Jimmy demands from Ellison not only loyalty to him, but also to others who are dear to him, like his father and the other women he had loved. Quote, not only about himself and all the things he believes in, his present and his future, but his past as well. Unquote. Ellison further tells Helena that Jimmy cannot live without his suffering. He would feel lost if he had no sufferings. In her conversation with her father, Ellison points out that Jimmy had married her from motives of revenge. What she means is that Jimmy, with his working class origin, had tried to take revenge upon the middle class by marrying her. She calls Jimmy a spiritual barbarian who had thrown a challenge to her by marrying her. Ellison is right in so far as Jimmy is indifferent to the feelings of persons who are socially above him. Ellison is also right in thinking that Jimmy cannot be truly happy with either Helena and herself. Quote, he wants something quite different from us. What it is exactly I don't know. A kind of cross between a mother and a Greek courtesan, a bench woman, a mixture of Cleopatra and Boswell. Unquote. Ellison is, however, wrong when she calls Jimmy a, quote, spiritual barbarian, unquote. Jimmy is a sensitive man. He is sensitive to his isolation, and this explains why he directs tirades on all. He expresses his grief over the death of Mrs. Tanner. Jimmy's analysis of Ellison that he lacks, quote, relaxation of spirit, unquote, is however wrong. No woman can show relaxation of spirit when she is subjected to satiric criticisms all the time. Ellison forsakes Jimmy for his continual torture of her over a long period of time. Helena persuades her to go when she is pregnant. Ellison is afraid that Jimmy will be more fierce to her when he would hear of her pregnancy. But she comes back, quote, groveling and crawling, unquote, as she says. The fact is that she has suffered a great deal. The loss of a child through miscarriage is the greatest misfortune that can befall a woman. The child could have been a comfort to her in her loneliness. She is distraught and forlorn. So it is convincing that at this hour she would try reconciliation with her husband, though it is an abject surrender. It is hysteria or just morbid curiosity that brings her to Jimmy. Page 47. Helena leaves Jimmy because she feels guilty. She is also tired and miserable. She looks upon Ellison's loss of child as a divine judgment on all. Moreover, Helena is a realist and so does not want to stand between Jimmy and Ellison. Jimmy's surrender to Ellison seems a bit artificial and forced, but Jimmy has also suffered much. His attacks and tirades on all are, as a matter of fact, a kind of self-torture, a kind of sadism which inflicts pain more on the person who attacks than on the person attacked. Cliff has deserted him. Mrs. Tanner is no more in the world. Helena has left him. He has no emotional props to lean on. He feels a complete void. At this time, Ellison comes back and surrenders to him. His reaction to bend down and take her in his arms is quite natural. In spite of his angry denunciation of Ellison in the early part, there are moments of tenderness. His love for Ellison has been shown on more than one occasion. Their plays with the bear and the squirrel indicate their genuine affection for each other. So their reunion at the moment of their spiritual crisis is quite convincing and appropriate. Question 30. Comment on the ending of the play Look Back in Anger. See answer to question number 5 and question 29. Question 31. Consider Look Back in Anger as a well-made play. See answer to question number 3 within bracket dramatic technique, bracket closed. Question 32. As women, Helena and Ellison are entirely different. Comment on this view with reference to Look Back in Anger. Answer to question number 7 and question 11. Explanations. For word notes, consult the text published by the Oxford University Press in 1993 in bracket intended for students of India, bracket closed. Page number are from the text published by Oxford University Press for Indian students in 1993. Act 1, number 1, page 55. Or does the white woman's burden make it impossible to think? Answer. In the first act of Look Back in Anger, Jimmy and Cliff are talking. They are two friends contrasted with each other. Jimmy is restless, proud, sensitive and blustering. But Cliff is calm, soothing and relaxed. Jimmy expresses his bitterness at the Sunday reviews. They dish out the same menu every week. The reviews are stale and stereotyped. Books are different, but the reviews are the same. Continued in the next file.